The views and opinions expressed by the host do not state or reflect those of the company and its management. Furthermore, the views, opinions, and insinuations made by the host and guest do not reflect those of the show, the management, and the network.
Good day everyone, I am Shan and with my co-host Rio. This is Shoes, where we talk about every nook and cranny issues that may affect our society and livelihood. Today we have a special guest from Beyond Meat Organization Advocate, Adley Jedtan.
Thank you for having me, Sean. I really appreciated this podcast for inviting me here.
Special guest today has something that he wants to convey to the public mass and to us. Can you kindly share the topic that we are going to talk about, Adley?
Okay, so we are going to talk about the meat industry or meat in general. So to start with this topic, I might ask you guys some questions. Can you raise your hand if you guys love to eat any type of meat on a daily basis?
I personally prefer to eat a lot of meat since I don't eat rice.
This is Shoes, where we talk about every nook and cranny issues that may affect our society and livelihood. Today we have a special guest from Beyond Meat Organization Advocate, Adley Jedtan.
Thank you for having me, Sean. I really appreciated this podcast for inviting me here.
Special guest today has something that he wants to convey to the public mass and to us. Can you kindly share the topic that we are going to talk about, Adley?
Okay, so we are going to talk about the meat industry or meat in general. So to start with this topic, I might ask you guys some questions. Can you raise your hand if you guys love to eat any type of meat on a daily basis?
I personally prefer to eat a lot of meat since I don't eat rice. I substitute eating meat because that's the only alternative I can think of since I still need protein in my diet. And of course, my dad cooks very well, that's why I get to eat a lot.
Yeah, me too. I love also eating meat. Do I need to explain how good was it? But kidding aside, for me, eating meat is like any other food that we've been eating since the day we were a child. That became a habit while growing up, and now it is hard to escape because that's the thing that we are used to do. You can resist it, but it will be hard. I might be wrong on this one, but because there are still people that are vegans. But back to the question. Yes, I love eating meat. Like for me, meat is like a thing that is embedded to me, and it will be hard for me to quit eating meat.
Personally, I've really had my fair share of eating meat. Like before being a part of this group, every weekend you can see me in Korean restaurants chugging on beef, chicken, and pork. I used to be that one spoiled brat who only eats meat and refuses to eat other types of food that I am unfamiliar with. But then as I became a part of this Beyond Meat organization group, I have learned the consequences and the negative effects that are happening on our planet just by eating meat. Eating meat has a huge toll on our planet nowadays. We are eating a product that our body does not really need, and it is really affecting our planet's well-being. Did you guys know that meat is really not that important in terms of our overall nutrition? Apart from exclusive meat vitamins like the B12, omega, and etc., we can live properly by decreasing the intake of meat by a substantial amount. Other nutrients like protein can be also found in fruits or vegetables like beans, peanuts, and more.
I agree. Even if meat is essential for us since it contains a lot of proteins, but it is also much healthier to eat less meat, specifically red meat and meat from burgers from fast food chains, because the energy it takes to digest, it takes a long time and should be eaten sparingly.
Exactly. The possibility of contracting different health issues just by eating red meat regularly can affect your health, right?
Yes, eating a lot of red meat can cause a lot of health problems including heart diseases, high cholesterol, obesity, and more since people usually cook it in excessive oil when it already has natural oil in them.
True, true. I agree with you guys. Yeah, I love eating meat, but still, there are still some other foods that we can eat that are more safe and nutritious than meat. We can eat veggies, fruits, and some plants in order to live.
That having this kind of lifestyle is really ineffective and not worth it. Like that short amount of time for the preparation of the food is also shortening your lifespan.
Yeah, it's kinda sad, but we can't blame the people nor ourselves because we're just living the system that we are used to. And some of us are still not knowledgeable about this kind of topic. It's on us if we want to change it or not.
I agree with you both. Eating meat has already been a part of our meals ever since. It makes it difficult for us and for other people to find a healthier alternative to the red meat that we are used to.
Yes, but it was not supposed to be like that before. In the past, the idea of having meat in your meal is like a luxury that is only exclusive for the rich people. Meat has been really expensive because of its low production. But today, it has been one of the cheapest options as a source of food since a lot of companies created factories to supply the demand of the people. The value or pricing of the meat has decreased because of the non-stop production of meat. Those people who had low or moderate consumption of meat turned out to be fine and healthier and still live up to this day. This idea of meat being a part of our lives was not that common before because the meat was a high valued product before. I think doing what is in the past will be more beneficial for our overall well-being. Apart from us having the actual ability to live with minimal to total absence of meat, did you guys know that meat also plays a big role in killing off our environment?
Yes, that is true. There have been studies that show how a number of slaughterhouses are built in the forest in the Amazon in Brazil. In this country alone, cattle ranching is one of the biggest driving forces of deforestation in the Amazon forest. A place to put these slaughterhouses is one thing, and the other is the issue of carbon dioxide emission from cattle in these slaughterhouses. Cows are known to produce methane, which exists in their bodies in the form of methane, which would eventually transform into CO2 gas in the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's a fact indeed. I also watched some video last night about gas emission that the meat farms emit a lot of carbon dioxide and release to our environment. And it's also one of the reasons why climate change is hard to solve.
That's right, guys. The emission of greenhouse gases is mainly and heavily contributed by the slaughterhouses. Did you know that the construction of slaughterhouses also requires a large amount of space? And you guys know where I'm going with this, right?
Exactly. More trees will be cut down just to make spaces for these slaughterhouses. But honestly, it would be a very hard battle to convince people to stop or even reduce meat consumption. This is basically because meat tastes really good, especially if you compare them to food alternatives like meat replaces and such.
Yes, and the sad thing about it is that there are a lot of huge companies that have already placed a lot of money in those projects. It is kind of hard for us to battle them. However, there are still inefficiencies in these industrial meat production methods. Did you know how many resources and materials you need to sustain and grow for those cattle and other types of animals that we eat? If we are talking about time, resources, and space in terms of creating meat versus plantation crops that we eat, there is a huge imbalance between them. I personally think that if we focus more on plantation crops rather than the industrial meats, we can have an easier and more sufficient means of food production. The production of meat is one of the greatest examples of an inefficient and ineffective mode of food production. Let us use water for example as our mode of resources. A pool of water can supply us with a month's worth of food supply if we use plantation crops as a means of food production. However, in the meat industry, That pool of water can only suffice for a week or day's worth of food supply.
I agree. Plants may be hard for a non-green thumb population, but if you do manage to get a landmass to grow plants, it will last you a lifetime.
Yeah, I might sound crazy about this, but it's about the money or the arising monopoly of people. Meat farms are the mode of their income.
Yes, and I think that there are a lot of reasons that need to be thoroughly explored why people still choose meat. Meat has been a part of the human race ever since the old age. We used to hunt and eat raw animals as our source of food. The scarcity of meat before has become a greater demand in the human race. I think it is because the change in the accessibility of meat that occurred today made the demand for it to grow higher, since a lot of people who want it can afford it nowadays. The increase in demand will lead to our environment's demise, and I think people should consider the situation of our planet because of this. I think this is just a phase that can be overcome if more people will be more aware of this situation.
I think the reason why people still choose to eat meat is that because we got used to eating it every day. It is a part of our lifestyle and it is a part of some people's diet. Since in our country, we're not used to just eating vegetables, and veganism is not very common here.
Yeah, I agree on that. I also think people still choose meat because of cultural and social norms. Society and the past made us what we are currently right now, and the reason why we love eating meat.
One good alternative I can think of is introducing food replacements to the masses and informing them why it is called alternatives in the first place. We should also be mindful of these food replacement products because even these can be detrimental in the environment. But I believe our little steps in trying to improve our lifestyle will eventually lead to the improvement of the environment.
It's really hard to think on how can we solve this kind of topic because the people and us also are used to eating meat and we've been doing this for the past 100 years. For me, it's kinda hard to change the system, but I watched some videos this earlier about genetic manipulation where you can now grow meat in the lab and produce meat with the use of plants. And I think it's a really big step for alternatives in eating meat.
In Beyond Meat, we are doing our utmost best in creating a plant-based meat that perfectly imitates original meat. Beyond Meat will create a new sustainable and eco-friendly type of meat where it will reduce carbon emissions. We are still in the process of mass producing and improving our plant-based meat. I am hoping that you guys can at least try our plant-based meat in your visits to your local grocery stores. Supporting our product will really help in improving it and making it more accessible than meat, which will really help our environment. Be a part of our change in reducing animal cruelty and saving our planet. So that is all that I want to say in this podcast. I hope you learned something from me today, and I really hope that you guys can make a difference from this information.
Thank you, Adley. We will talk about that and hoping to try the taste of plant-based meat. I mean, it's a really big step on changing and becoming more safety to ourselves and also to our environment.
Once again, I would like to thank this podcast for having me, and I'm counting on you guys to at least try our plant-based meat that tastes like meat and also protects our environment.
Thank you, Adley, for being here with us and sharing your insights and asking the right questions. Also, thank you to my partner, Sean, for accompanying me today. And for our listeners, I hope that you learned a lot from our podcast episode for today. And thank you for tuning in.